It's thinking. All right, we are live. I'm going to go make us live over here on the Instagram. It always makes me wait a few seconds. So,
yep. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Mm-hmm.
Yep, we're good on both here. How are you?
Doing very good. How are you, Doc?
Good. I can't believe it's Thursday again. I feel like these little Thursday conversations of ours just come so quickly, but I have just grown to really look forward to them. So hopefully you as well.
Yeah, super fun. Super
Yeah.
fun.
So we want to talk today about maintenance. I think that's such a conversation because I do think there's a lot of programs and approaches out there that instigate really quick results, which I think is really motivating for people. And I think it gets people just kind of like over that hump of staleness, stuckness, whatever the word, in terms of their journey toward fat loss, weight loss, however we want to say that. But then, like, how do we maintain that, especially if we are doing some things in the early stages that aren't necessarily sustainable? Because I think a lot of times just to get that engine going, just to get that mental and physical motivation of seeing results, sometimes we do have to do some things that are a little bit more aggressive and extreme. And then we want to know, how do we then sustain this or transition into something that's maybe a little bit more lifestyle oriented? And so I think it's a great conversation because I think a lot of people do see results, but I think the data would show us that most people don't sustain the results that they see in a weight loss strategy.
Yep. Yes. There's a few things to say in this. So so number one, I'll probably be really, really helpful in one area and I'll be very unhelpful in another. Okay. So where I'm going to be most unhelpful in this conversation is if someone's watching this and they've lost weight by massive calorie reduction, I won't be able to help in terms of maintenance. If someone's lost weight because of Jenny Craig, Weight Watchers, any kind of diet that's really caused them to not eat enough, and Ozempic, Wegovy, I will not be helpful. And there is a reason why. I'll explain that reason. I haven't seen any of those to be long-term sustainable. So what I found a long time ago with my patients was I was selling isogenics, which is a shake weight loss kind of thing.
Like a supplement line kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just basically pills and powders and that kind of stuff. And people would lose weight. And the moment they're done eating it, it would come right back. It was so. I say this because if you haven't learned what your body needs when you're doing the weight loss thing, you're not going to know what to do in maintenance. So there's a few things there. One, chrononutrition. Have you learned when your body needs to eat and how much food it needs? And the answer to this first part, where I'm not going to be helpful, is if you haven't learned that, you might be more helpful with that, Doc, because I don't know how to teach someone that. So when I have people lose weight, it's because we eat enough and eat on time. And my patients don't starve themselves. I do not want them to be hungry. So maintenance looks very different if you, and also you started saying this in the very beginning, what kind of weight, this is another question, what kind of weight did you lose? Did you lose muscle, water, or fat? And so the answer is different. How do you maintain, like most people in those things have lost muscle. So it's like,
mass,
yeah. How do I maintain that? Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
How do you track that with your folks? I have an InBody machine in my office, or I send them out to do body composition. So I test body composition every 2 weeks over my 12-week process. And I know we have a little different approach. Mine is a little longer duration, right? But we are tracking and looking at muscle mass, body fat levels, and of course, independent on how much someone has to lose, they may lose some water, or they may lose a little lean tissue, because if you've got 50, 100 pounds to lose, you're going to lose some of everything in that journey. But we want to make sure the ratios are skewed in the right direction. But yeah, I'd be curious on your end.
Yeah. So the InBody is great. I work with people all over the world, and not everyone has access to that. So we actually send a specific biometric scale to our patients. And that actually measures percentages of muscle, water, and fat. And the in body is very accurate, but you got to have a $4,000 or $5,000 machine. So that's not something I
Right.
can send to
Yeah,
people. So
it is very cost
yeah,
prohibitive. And I have a network where I can find locations near
yeah,
people wherever I am. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, I can't work with everybody in person either. So it makes it nice to say, hey, these are the 4 or 5 locations around you that have
Mhm.
the machine and you can go. But yeah, doing it at home. And I do
Yeah,
think those scales have gotten better over time.
yeah,
There's always going to be, technology is what it is, but it's a good trend
yeah.
to definitely see what's happening. And I think you're right in the extremity of the situation and the maintenance process. Like you said, for me, mine is very slow and gradual progress so that we aren't having to go in these deep deficits. We aren't
Yep.
having to do things that are not sustainable. We're learning about carbs, fat, protein intake and what our body needs. Just like you were saying, you're teaching them from a different perspective, but teaching them about their body. I'm definitely wanting them to understand, like, this is how I manipulate my
Mhm.
carb, fat, protein ratios depending on my goals. If I want to build muscle, we have to go into a surplus. If I want to lose body fat, we have to go into a moderate deficit. So I think too,
Yeah.
just understanding that it makes maintenance easier because then you know how to titrate the variables to move into a different goal. If your body changes, your lifestyle changes, your training changes, you need to know how to ebb and flow your food along with that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So one of the downsides of what I do is I used to tell people that quick fat loss was unhealthy until I figured out the right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And now because what was happening is many people were doing terrible things, HCG and stuff to lose weight rapidly. Um, so one of the reason I say this is that we take 40 days. We have our patients lose between 15 to 30 pounds of fat in 40 days. And if I was speaking to myself 10 years ago, like I said, I would have said that's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is if you do it the right way, we don't do calorie deficits like we said. And I don't have people doing workouts. So, but the downside is in those 40 days, those people lose. The upside is blood pressure gets better. I have people get off depression medications, arthritis is gone, and they're feeling energized. Their sleep is back. Hot flashes are gone. I can sit here and list off all these, but they've only learned how to lose fat.
Mm.
So you have not learned in those 40 days how to build muscle. You haven't even learned how to eat right. So that's something I have to tell people
Yeah.
is, hey, congratulations. You only know how to learn to lose fat.
Which is the hardest part, I would argue. But to your point, is like, yes,
True.
there's like the follow up to that.
Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah.
what I've seen a lot of times is people will get through 12 weeks with me too. And they're like, yay, I'm there. And I'm like, you're not, there's never there. Like, this is life now. Like, you still
Yeah.
have to hold yourself accountable. You have to stay consistent. You have to be mindful. Can you have some flexibility within that? Absolutely. Right. That's just part of the process. But I do think I've seen people not stay with me through that maintenance transition where I try to kind of reverse their calories back up out of that deficit and get them to maintenance so that then they can live there and their body can learn how to exist out of a deficit. And I think that's something that they get too quick to pull the trigger on, like, I'm good. I know how to do this. Now I'm like, are you sure you don't want to transition into maintenance for a little while and just make sure that all the pieces are in place? So it is hard when people have committed and they get to the end of their 40 days or they get to the end of their 12 weeks and they're ready to like go do the thing. But there's always got to be follow up. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's important if someone's watching this and the topic is how do I maintain weight loss? That's really the first piece of this is if you lost muscle and fat, it's like, for me, I'd be like, I don't know how to tell you that. Now, for my patients that lose fat, they have very little muscle loss. And we have people drinking half their body weight in ounces of water per day. So there's very little overall water loss where we make sure we replenish that. And by the way, just so people understand this too, when you actually trigger fat burning, you pee out the majority of your fat. Some of it comes out the other way, but the body will break down fat into liquid, and so processed through the bile, but you will pee out a lot of your fat. So if someone's lost that weight without drinking water, it's very challenging because you haven't been used to drinking that water long term. So anyway, I'm saying that because it's very interesting to see, how did you lose the weight? So if you lost with a caloric deficit, that's a bigger challenge, because you can't keep starving yourself. And so one of the principles that I have in my framework, Doc, is that you can't starve yourself to healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you can't starve yourself to healthy. So if you had healthy weight loss, let's just assume someone watching this has had healthy fat loss. They've maintained muscle mass. They have, they've been drinking water, and they've actually had actual fat loss. And I think that's where you and I had some different approaches, because you said something really cool to me in the first conversation, was that I don't have my patients counting calories. We actually have them weigh their food. So we have them weigh their food so they can visually see. But you talked about this idea of having two ways of sort of viewing it. Is one is like intuitive eating, or sort of like counting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love pushing my patients towards the intuitive eating. But remember, in the 40 days, I'm teaching them to stop and feel their hunger, of which they've never done before. And not only have they not done it, when they are hungry, they've been taught to do something to suppress the hunger.
Press it down. That's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. So I found when a person stops being so busy and they just listen for a moment to their body, you can feel hunger. So this next piece of it is, you're right. For us, at least, we go, well, how much do I need to eat? And I'm also should say this too. We have people lose that amount of fat without working out. If I wanted to call it the slow 40, I would have people work out. And the only reason why is because so many people are under eating and working out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want people to figure out, hey, how much food do I need? We do 20 to 30 minutes of walking a day. That's it. And many of these people that start my program, they have spent a year trying to lose weight working out. So our approach is, let me have you stop working out just to chill out for a second. And let's have you figure out how much food you need without working out. So when you do go work out, we know how much more you need to add, so you're not breaking down muscle when you're working out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think people have just heard so much information, and I think the industry pushes high intensity training, calorie deficits, diet culture, whether that's the types of foods, et cetera. But I think that, to your point, it's like bringing the systems back to baseline and just starting to recognize, okay, if I take out all the extraneous variables, because what I see a lot of times with clients is, they're trying to change all the levers at once. They're adding more training, and they're changing their food and the sources of food. And then they're cutting this and they're doing this. And I'm like, hey, and then supplements, and I'm adding this. And I'm saying, we got to just clear the mechanism because if you start changing your workouts and changing your food and changing this, like, we don't know what is affecting what. Right. So I think you've got to figure out what the balance there is, and then take all the systems down.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page with so many things. That is one thing that's very hard for humans to do, is to change one thing at a time. And so the reason I say that is because many humans will change more than one thing, and then you don't know what made the change. So, Doc, this is what we do after we have someone lose 15, 25, 30 pounds in those 40 days. We implement, just like you said, the maintenance phase. I had to actually, in the very beginning, I call the fat loss phase 1, and maintenance phase is phase 2. And you really can't have one without the other. So when we go into phase 2, I call it the testing phase. So just to see how you resonate with this. So we have patients test our foods, because I have found that no matter how much knowledge we have about nutrition, I found that foods affect people differently. And it's not just foods, it's your stress levels and how you're functioning in your life that can actually make the foods respond differently too. And I'll explain what I mean. But because we're having them eat lean meats, vegetables, and fruits, that's it. So no simple carbohydrates, very little complex carbs besides the vegetables. So one of the first things we do when someone's down to a healthy fat percentage, we have them test complex carbs. it is so vital that someone test complex carbs. We have them do it before simple carbs. And it's such an important piece because once you figure out which complex carbs your body resonates with, you have a lot of control over what you go out to eat, right? So when you see that a white potato makes you, and here's how we test it. We test one food a day and we weigh ourselves. Like literally that's how it is because they're so clean up to this point. So they'll eat a white potato. If they gain weight the next day, they go, well, that's interesting. The next day we try a sweet potato. Most people eat sweet potato, they literally will not gain weight. They stay the same. And so they can see that their body responds really well. There's no blood sugar spikes. There's no weight gain. So
that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about if you've ever considered having people wear a continuous glucose monitor and just see what the response would be. Because I think that would be super interesting.
I do too. I've never done it. And actually, it's something that I always do. I always test things on myself first before I do it with my patients. Mm-hmm. So Doc, and it'd be fun for you and I to do if you, I would love to wear a glucose monitor. Maybe we do some lives about this and some posts about our glucose monitor. And I would love to watch what certain foods do. I would love to watch what happens when you miss a meal. Mm-hmm. I would love to watch what happens when you have an argument with your spouse and what happens to your blood sugar.
The emotional piece of it. Yeah, that would be really interesting.
It'd be kind of cool. It'd be really cool.
Because I didn't have a continuous monitor, but I got a glucose meter just with the finger prick. I ordered one and my blood sugar stayed the same every single time I tested it. It was the most interesting thing. I did it for a whole week and I did it first thing in the morning. Then I would do it right after a meal. I would do it at night. And one day I just tried to make it spike. I just ate like a little bag of Skittles and it still stayed at like 95. Like it was so I don't know about continuous because I was a little skeptical. Like, am I getting the blood prick? Am I getting enough on the thing? But I just do think to your point is like some people's bodies ride in that really nice equilibrium. And I've always been pretty lean and just been able to kind of moderate my body composition and weight. So my body just may not respond that much to those. But I do think for people that are on this journey and trying to figure out like where's my threshold and what foods spike and maybe the combinations. I know there's like this big thing with this glucose revolution book or whatever, where they're like, if you eat this before this and you put your carbs at the end of the meal, you're not going to spike blood sugar as much. And I would just be curious if there's any truth to that because I've never really collected the data on it. So
I think it would be, if you're up for this, I think that you and I would like to try to do a continuous. I have a medical doctor friend of mine that challenged me to do this. Just wear a continuous glucose monitor because the changes can happen. Like they can happen at such a fast rate. That when you test it, they could be the same. Maybe it was changing in between. Maybe it wasn't. But I think that would be really powerful for us to actually do. And this is an important conversation because I started looking up recent research about aging and the correlation between blood sugar spikes and increased aging. And I thought that is really interesting. The less blood sugar spikes you have, the slower you age. So I was like, that's pretty wild. I just read the research about 2 weeks ago. So, and I started digging in. I was like, this is really interesting. So, and I think it's because there's what happens with the increased blood sugar. You're literally raising the acidity levels in the body also.
Well, and I was just thinking like oxidative stress. I mean, if there's just this chronic like ebb and flow, it's like your body's constantly trying to fight to get you back to equilibrium. But if you could stay kind of in that sweet spot where it's always going to go up a little after you eat, and the goal is not for it to never go up to. I think that's where people freak out. It's like, oh my gosh, I ate rice and my blood sugar. That doesn't mean you shouldn't eat rice. You just need to understand like that's an energy spike. Go do that before you exercise so that you can use the carbs, like, the timing of it. But I do think there's a lack of education too when you are wearing it and you see the spike, that's not like an evil food that you should not eat. I think you just need to know what spikes your blood sugar so you can moderate it. Yeah.
That's what I want my patients to understand after they've lost this fat. We go through, I have a testing document, but I try to have them go through as many complex carbs to test them. And all they do is just literally look at the scale. And you could use a monitor, but listen, I'm like I'm a man. So I live by the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. So that's a benefit for my patients. I work with women. Yeah. It's a benefit because I take complex things and I make them simple, stupid, for myself. And so, because trust me, so again, I think it works really well because I go, let me give you the simple method to do this. If you want something more complex, you can follow that. But I found complexity is sort of the enemy of longevity because you can only do complex things for so long. And if you don't understand something, right? So truly that whole, when you talked about that intuitive eating versus this calculated eating, I really loved that because I was like, you know what? I certainly sway my patients towards the intuitive eating because I want them to just tune in. That doesn't mean it's the right or wrong thing. Some people might really like to have this calculated eating. So could you talk about that, those two things you mentioned?
Yeah. So what we were talking about is I feel like nutrition in general has kind of two camps. You've got folks that are just very anti-calorie counting, macros, excessive tracking for a number of reasons, valid reasons. We do need to kind of be flexible with ourselves and not get attached to all of these metrics. But I do believe that there has to be that initial foundation of knowledge before you can be intuitive about how you're eating. You still need to understand how much food does my body need to meet the demands of my training? How much does my body need just to fuel primary function? How much protein is appropriate for my muscle mass to maintain my, skeletal structure and support that? So I tend to start people with very data-driven, detail-oriented information about macros and calories and spacing and timing so that they learn that. And then over time, they can start to become more intuitive once you know what a plate looks like for yourself, right? Like when I build a balanced plate and I have portions, but I can also appreciate for you is like we were just saying, like, get all the basic pieces in place and like just get it back in touch with your body. And then maybe you're ready to go to the next level. So you're looking at it more like graduating up to macros. I'm kind of looking at it like start with the foundation and graduate to intuitive eating. So I think it's just a little bit of a different.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I love that distinction. And probably as analytical as I get, I do have my patients weigh their food. So we start off with a certain amount of ounces. So ounces of lean meats, vegetables, and fruits. So I have them weighing every meal. Nice. And what I'll do is, but it's not counting calories, right? Because that's more advanced, right? And this is simple as this. When somebody gets hungry, like if they're hungry in between their meal times, I try to get them away from snacking and going back into we'll add 1 ounce of lean meats, veggies, and fruits until they feel full. That's as simple as it is. And over the last, 10 years, we've had such success. And I believe because it is simple to do it like that, right? Yeah. So the idea though is that you can be at a restaurant and you can literally see something and go, oh, I can tell it's 4 ounces. After 40 days, you can actually tell. And so my patients started realizing, Dr. Goldman, I go to a restaurant. When I order an 8-ounce burger, I'm actually getting a 4-ounce burger. And I said, you're damn right you are. You're the restaurant, you're under eating at a restaurant. So restaurants fill us up with breads and fries and those things, and you get not enough meat. Not enough protein. Not enough protein. And the second thing you don't get enough of ever is vegetables. No, almost never. So anyway, I know we're getting close to the time, but there's never enough time to talk about it all.
I know, but I think people are liking like the little nuggets and then, can come back and get a little bit more. But yeah, I think we would We should do the continuous glucose thing. So I'll
I'm
maybe
in.
see
Count me
if
in.
I have somebody here that, because I think you have to have probably a prescription for something like that.
I don't think you do anymore. There are
No?
many,
Okay.
and I think you and I can get it as doctors. I don't think we.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that I can probably get, but let's look into find that because I'd like to use a similar one, and then let's make this live post, and let's make a whole process out of this so we can actually monitor it. Do daily. I'd love to do daily posts of you and I to see what happens.
Yeah, just like what you ate and what spiked it.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be cool. All right.
Very cool.
Awesome.
Great to talk to you.
All right. See you soon.